Hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to this week's masterclass. Thank you so much for joining us. Just a quick reminder before we start that we're doing these masterclasses sessions every 2 weeks on Wednesdays at 5 p.m. UK time. So stay tuned to our social media where we share all of our upcoming events there, and feel free to join us anytime you want. So for today's session, our guest is Carlos Ortega. He's an LSDM alumnus, and he did his bachelor's in design with us. Carlos is working at the moment as an industrial designer at USG Ceilings Plus. And for today's session, we'll be discussing the topic exploring backpack design, creating a mobile workspace. As always, if you have any questions or comments during or after the presentation, feel free to share them in the chat box. And then in the end, when we open the session for a quick Q&A, we'll read them all. So thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you, Carlos, for accepting our invitation and for sharing your work with us. The stage is all yours.
Thank you. It's nice to be here. It was great to have LSDM provide me this speaking opportunity, and I must say I had a very positive experience through the program and would highly recommend it to all who are interested. So, again, a little bit about myself. I've had the opportunity to work in aerospace, in the automotive, in the medical industries for the last 20 years. And currently, I'm working at USG Corporation with the Specialty Ceilings Division, and we're designing some pretty interesting things, especially when it concerns ceilings involving new technologies. But it's just been a roller coaster of a ride, and I've had the wonderful opportunity to work on some very interesting projects. But having said that, this was a project, and this project exploring backpack design was really it really had its origins in personal experience. The idea of making a backpack a bit more useful just kind of appealed to me, and I'd like to share today just a little bit of what I've learned, and I've outlined a few learning outcomes that I hope that we can all take part in and understand. As you can see from this slide here, I'd like to basically uh, sum up, if you will, my experiences in these three areas: understanding the problem, determining design feasibility, and understanding more of the product development side of things. Understanding the problem, what we're looking at is, questions that oftentimes refer to whether or not I'm looking at the problem in the correct way. Is there a problem that actually needs solving? Is there something that the user needs to ultimately address? What am I trying to facilitate? When talking about design feasibility, and we'll get into more of this later, but is the product idea actually worth it? Can this product actually improve a certain condition, a certain method? And lastly, product development, where putting the research together and actually making something and designing something is something of certain interest. That what governs such decisions, how best to kind of evaluate the manner in which that should be done. So let's move forward here and let's just talk about our first learning outcome. So these are just a few of the questions that came to mind when this started. Could a backpack become something more? Um, we can certainly relate to using a backpack. I'm sure all of us have used a backpack. I'm sure all of us have um, put it on, taken it off, and we've put so much stuff in it. We've certainly removed things. We've kicked it to the side. But could a backpack become something more? And how exactly are people using backpacks nowadays? With other technologies, it's not just to carry your gym clothes, it's not just to carry your laptop, but there are other things now that people are integrating in backpacks to help the user ultimately gain more benefit. And what is it that people do like about backpacks? What is it that they don't like? What aspects are of particular interest and what are really just bothersome and cumbersome? So, like many of you, I'm sure every morning I arrive at my desk and I remove my backpack, take out my laptop, plug it in, and then toss my backpack to the side. So my backpack doesn't really get any more use until I put something back in it. And I never give it another thought. In fact, I oftentimes just kick it to the side at my desk and never think much more about the backpack. But the more I thought about how I use my backpack, the more I realized how pathetic the existence of a backpack really is. You know, if it's only meant to carry something, then it's no good once I'm done carrying. And I thought to myself, well, if there's something I can do about that, could a backpack actually become something more? So my motivations for this project surfaced from two different reference points. My first experience is certainly of personal use. I've cataloged a wealth of experiences using backpacks and um used it throughout my academic career as well as in my professional career. And carrying my laptop around with a mouse and a charger, in addition to textbooks, oftentimes, I, I oftentimes look for a place to sit down because typically the computer labs are full or the company doesn't have so many working areas outside of my desk that facilitate me working somewhere. And where does we live in a time where everyone has just become much more mobile, where work is not only done at home now or at the company, but there are many tasks involved going to, let's say, a particular site within the company and carrying the backpack and having your laptop in there just becomes a normal thing as part of the workday. But at the moment you take that laptop out of the bag is just thrown to the side. We see here in this slide that even the universities are now defining laptop requirements for new students, warning them that, hey, you're going to need a laptop and you're going to need to use it as part of your studies. But as you oftentimes relate and understand, most of these campuses don't offer the extra and additional room or the additional computer labs that facilitate working somewhere. Normally, the computer labs, as I recall, were full, and places outside were sometimes crowded, people drinking their coffee, that kind of thing. And so I felt that there could definitely be an additional utilitarian function that the backpack can offer. So, from the moment items are placed in the backpack, it is known that they'll be transported to their destination. And personal observations have shown that once you reach your destination, as you could see from these pictures, you see that everything is laid out. You could see in figure number 3, the backpack is on the chair next to him, so no one else can sit there. It's completely ignored. It's irrelevant at this moment. And as you could see from figure 3 as well, there's very little privacy between the two individuals that would likely be sitting there. To the right is actually a photo of my local library. And as you could see, there are only tables to the right side of that image, and anyone can sit at that table. But if you wanted to work just a little bit more privately, if you wanted to work with some level of privacy, you wouldn't necessarily attain that. And so there's a lack of space when it comes to mobile computing, mobile workspace for those individuals that are looking to just accomplish something more while they're on the move, while they're outside. And I think that this is kind of what I've experienced. I noticed that my local library, as you see here, only offers so much, and it's typically filled by the time I get there. But there's more. Backpacks are great to carry things, but biomechanically, backpacks can also prove to be harmful under certain conditions. And I understanding the problem of backpacks, understanding what it is that people don't like, it was important to kind of dive into and gain some level of understanding about how backpacks can be something of discomfort. When backpacks are heavy, the user would intuitively lean forward, as you could see in Figure 5. This picture illustrates just by stars some of the critical areas where pain is and discomfort is often experienced by the user. If you notice, there is a slight angle to how he leans forward just to compensate for the load that he's carrying on his back. The In Figure 6, we see that the thoracic region of your spinal column is the primary area in which we experience discomfort when wearing backpacks. And in Figure 7, we see just how the methods of the various methods of people carrying a backpack. We see that in Figure A, B, C, and D, there are multiple ways of carrying bags, but we also know that uh, there is some discomfort in the manner in which uh, we carry them. Understanding the negatives of using the backpack also meant gaining some insight on how it affects the human body. So I needed to understand a little bit more of what happens in the body to better understand how my approach to creating a mobile workspace through a backpack would be possible. As you could see in Figure 7, the action of wearing a backpack inherently affects the muscles of the user in various areas. And placing any load on the backpack would certainly force your body to have to compensate for that load. And at a certain threshold, that load would then be a bit too much, where the user would experience some discomfort. As you could see, the in Figure A, the person is wearing it with both straps. B with one strap. C, we see that it's a different type of a bag, but we see that it's over one shoulder. As you see in D, it's across. And it was important to, just like I said, understand how muscle activity works a little bit when carrying a bag. And so there was a study actually done um, in 2015 that concluded that the manner in which a bag is carried and the number of straps being utilized affects various muscle groups along the spine, where they found that in condition A in Figure 7, they found that this was the least negatively that 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 least a it least negatively affects the user. It has the lesser strain, the lesser stresses on a person's back. And we see that in B, C, and D, that the muscle activity increased as well as the back pain because of the asymmetrical manner in which the stresses are distributed over the back. And these are things that could be avoided and could be um, considered when taking this product idea further. So obviously the straps provide pressure points, and biomechanically it was just kind of I think required by me to just understand where the stresses are in terms of wearing the backpack. In Figure 8 on the left side, you see points A1, A2, A3, A4. You see W for waist and you see H for hip. It's along these dots and these points that the pressure points can be the greatest. And in Figure 9, we see in kilopascals the stresses increase depending on the type of strap or mounting mechanisms around the body. We see that this particular study, which was done in 2019, shows that the pressure values are least for double belts type of backpacks, as you could see with the parenthesis TB in Figure 8. Those with the higher stresses were having no belts because most of the load would then be on the shoulders and around the neck. Whereas in a double belt situation, the hip became the most reliable and most resilient place for static pressures to be distributed more evenly. So the study concluded that the double pack uh, or double belt pack and T pack demonstrated a more ergonomically balanced form factor. It also made the following recommendation that no one should be able to carry, or no one should be carrying a backpack that's 40% greater than their BMI. As an example, somebody who would weigh 180 pounds at 5'6" would probably benefit not carrying any load higher than 70 pounds in that backpack. Otherwise, exceeding that would only increase the stresses on the body. Also, the study concluded that the shoulder straps and the hip belt um, were most profitable for the user because in tandem, working together, it secures the backpack more closely to the user. The loads would sit along the waist, but not necessarily be distributed as unevenly if it were just only a shoulder situation. So having this information, I understood, okay, these are the problems that were surrounding backpacks. These were some of the factors that impact users. And here I was now at the point of taking some of this information and determining whether this was feasible. Is this design, is my product idea worth it? Would there be benefit pursuing this product idea of taking a backpack and be making it something mobile and more utilitarian? So now it became a process to determine whether this idea of mine would be somehow feasible. So who was I targeting? Who would I be thinking about as I approach this project? Well, obviously, I think that anybody with a laptop would benefit from such an idea, but more specifically for the purposes of this uh, for this project, I had creatives in mind. Oftentimes, creatives would go outside and conduct their work, whether it be in a public place or in outdoor type of settings. Certainly, academic students and those that are self-employed who have to go from site to site and perform their duties. Um, to technical professionals, professionals that oftentimes provide some level of maintenance or some level of construction or oversight out in the field where people that I think could benefit from my product idea here, and even those who are in sales who perhaps have to go to certain conventions or go and deliver some type of a service to someone else. So I felt like, okay, so at this point, I understood that there was a possibility of helping some people. And the next thing was, well, how do I help them? How do I make this worth it? And in doing that, um, I found that I realized I needed to work towards a clear set of objectives that would become the standard to which everything would be measured against. So I proceeded with what's called a product design evaluation. And really, what this is are honest questions that were aimed to evaluating whether there was potential to move forward. And the questions, as you could see, involved whether or not this product provided a solution to a problem. Was there a problem that I was actually trying to address? Also, would it benefit the end user? Would it help them in some capacity? I had to also ask, well, would the product require some level of instruction or some training for use? Is the potential cost of developing the product reasonable? And as you could see from the additional questions, these were questions that were to help shape how I proceeded forward and helped also to funnel ideas and interest so that I can determine by clear objectives what is likely feasible. And you could see here, I had two primary objectives where I wanted to certainly accomplish. I wanted to extend the functionality of a backpack to include it or to have it become a mobile workspace. Secondly, I also wanted to improve my backpack design, my backpack idea. I wanted to improve the human factors to prevent injury. I felt that I had an opportunity not just to make a backpack more utilitarian, but perhaps to address the common discomforts of wearing a backpack. I'm sure everyone's experienced the occasional discomfort around the shoulders or the stiffness around the neck. And when you're carrying technology such as a backpack, a power supply, some textbooks, perhaps, and additional things, that backpack is going to become heavy, especially the longer you wear it. And so I wanted to take an opportunity to just kind of look at that and address that if possible with my design. The next thing was, what should I do with this product idea? In fact, it was a bit overwhelming to think about just how much I could try and include into this backpack. So I needed to develop a criteria that would help facilitate my design choices, especially when coming up with something new. So an evaluation matrix was very, very useful. And here we see the pluses, the potentials, and the concerns of various ideas across a certain criteria. So each option on the left would have ended up with a cumulative score, where I would add up, as you could see in A, chest compartment, I measured that to see if will it increase storage capacity. You know, yes. So I gave that a number three score. Will it facilitate product use? Not necessarily having a chest compartment would facilitate my idea for a mobile backpack. Will it improve human factors? I felt that that was probably a poor thing because having to wear something across your chest as a pocket of some sort wasn't necessarily ideal, especially when it comes to having to wear this perhaps for an extended period of time. Would it be feasible to include a chest compartment as part of my idea? No. And how did I feel about it? What was my emotional response to this particular feature, A, of a chest compartment? My emotional response was just okay, but it wasn't necessarily something that I was truly passionate about including. And as you can see through the various options, we see that some options became uh, favorable, others became less favorable. And this evaluation matrix was very helpful to make sure that this was uh, helping me narrow my options and to focus only on those with the highest potential and to focus on those that would yield the highest uh, reward to the end user. And as you could see on the right, uh, options A, C, E, and K were of concern. I could probably refine those. I could probably facilitate, rethinking those options and perhaps adjusting them. But it also became very clear to see how B, F, and J were options that stood out immediately, and to see how options D, G, and H had some potential should I want to pursue that further. So having that evaluation matrix was helpful to kind of narrow down my ideas, what options I wanted to include, but I wanted to see just how the market potential was. Is there a market for backpacks? Is there something of interest that I should be, taking note of? And I notice in this figure 10, what you'll see is the manufacturing sales of rucksacks, backpacks, and other bags in the UK. And as you could see in, what was it, 2019, it reached as high as 51 million or 52 million. But you see that also in 2021, post pandemic, obviously everybody was home. There was less traveling going around. But in 2021, we had about 31.7 million British pounds uh, sold in 2021, which is equivalent to roughly 39 million US dollars. And in 2020, you could see how that 31.7 million was an increase from the previous year of 27.5. So projecting further, we could see that there was strong growth for 2022 and beyond. And I think this validated what my idea I think may help, and just how the markets in general are moving towards growth. So now that I have funneled uh, my options, I've evaluated whether this was feasible, what to include as part of my design. The question was, well, now what do I do with everything? What am I really trying to achieve? And can I make something now? I was a bit anxious to get my pencil and just start sketching and modeling. And I think that it became important to understand that I required some level of organization with the previous information that I had about understanding the problem and continuing to understand um, whether this product idea was feasible. So I needed something to kind of provide some guidance, and certainly a measure or a metric that would help define my product idea success. So came up with these project objectives, and it became important to outline these objectives because this is what success would look like if I could meet these three objectives. As you can see in Figure 11, my primary objective was to design a backpack that could actually transform its form factor to a mobile workspace with privacy walls. Um, I think privacy within a public place is difficult to define because it can be categorized in a couple of ways, where privacy could, for some people, can mean safety. Others could define privacy as just solitude. And there are even those who would define privacy as just having anonymity in areas that are in public space. And so privacy can mean several things to different people, but I wanted to provide a form factor that would provide some degree of privacy. Second, and my second objective is I wanted to include a mechanical system to assist offsetting the loads that would be experienced by the user. I felt that a mechanical system hasn't been explored sufficiently yet, and I thought that I had an idea in terms of just being able to offset loads that were experienced on the back through some mechanical assist system that I think would be small enough and compatible with the backpack design. And three, if I could accomplish objective two, I wanted to make sure that I can improve on the form and fit of the backpack. You have backpacks that have there are various designs. There are those with frames, there are those that are just fabric and just hanging off your shoulder. But I wanted to be a little bit more purposeful to improve the form and the fit, and also to provide a bit more comfort and prevent injury or misuse. Now, to accomplish my primary objectives, Figure 12 just uh, quickly shows just how I was to meet my objectives. Certainly, I was going to be using CAD. In particular, for this project, I used SolidWorks, and wanted to make sure that I did a little research to find and understand what shock absorbers were. My idea was now going to include a shock absorber as part of the mechanical assist system. And I wanted to contour the backpack in such a way that at least the user would not experience as much or as high of a degree of discomfort around the waist and the shoulders. So obviously, I needed something. It became evident. It became obvious that I needed to keep the user in the center of this whole design process that I was about to undertake. And I needed to adhere to a design method just to make sure that I could hold myself accountable to how to proceed with this. And a holistic, human centered approach is meant to have a clear understanding of the user's environment as well as the purpose and undertaking. So I wanted to make sure that I kept my work and kept my focus on the user, not on the product itself, because ultimately the user will define just how successful this product idea truly is. So as you could see in figure 14, I basically just went online and got to see some of the ideas that are currently in market out there. What I found particularly interesting is how some of these are just frames where you can then wear a bag just over that frame. Others were a bit more utilitarian, where you could see how the bags can transform to carry your traveling items, as well as seeing a briefcase turn into a more kind of a private, work area, similar to kind of what I had. In figure 15, we see that there are various types of backpacks. There are those who, as you could see from the figure 15, some are just on the back. There's obviously some that are in the front. Some incorporate both front and back usage, and some are just over the handle or over the shoulder, uh, even in some cases using some type of harness. And in figure 16, this was my very first attempt to kind of explore a form factor to kind of imagine what would be needed, what features, again, how would features be included in terms of making something that kind of unfolds and moves and changes shape. And as you could see, I have included some privacy walls. I was thinking about, well, how would this stand as a backpack when it was transformed into some mobile workspace? Would it be able to stand sufficiently by itself? And so this was fun, and I found that um, I needed to be very careful, like I mentioned previously, just how the user interacts with this backpack, because I wanted to, as I said in my objectives, I wanted to improve usage and reduce any personal injury or discomfort. And so um, ergonomics were important. Ergonomics were important. So I wanted to make sure that I included some certain factors to do so. So I came up with this idea. This was my final kind of configuration. You don't see many locking mechanisms in terms of straps or Velcro because this idea, of course, being conceptual, was to illustrate whether a backpack could move and transition into a new form factor. And as you could see from these exploratory models, that there is a waist belt as well as some shoulder straps and the basic components that um, you have an opening flap, you have a means to click and adjust the straps as well as the belt. Here's how it looks opened. Um, what you see on the very top in that kind of rectangular area is actually supposed to be a mirror. I felt that nobody would appreciate being sneaked upon um, from behind when you're focused in your work. I also needed to take a look and see just where potential areas where pockets and compartments wanted to be. I also needed to think about, well, is there even sufficient room for a mouse to be utilized by the user should they require one? I know, with everything being touch technology, mice are becoming less practical for some people, but I thought that this was necessary to at least include because there are peripherals, especially for digital artists, for example, that may require just a little bit more real estate and be able to work within the confines of the backpack. And so here we see just uh, how it is possible, I think, to open up a backpack to something more utilitarian and become actually something more rather than an obstacle that's right next to you or sitting in the seat uh, adjacent to you. Moving forward, I think this is where um, the secret sauce is probably at most of all. In this view, you see that I'm showing that the strap should be able to adjust closer to the neck or away from the neck. I wanted to have that kind of an option so that it becomes much more comfortable to settle the backpack around your shoulders and not necessarily have your neck um, encroached by such by the straps or feel the weight so close to your neck that certainly you're going to feel some level of pain and discomfort. But I wanted to offer some level of adjustment around that. Also, you can get an idea and see that I created a cushion that was not necessarily obtrusive, not overwhelming, but something that was more conformed to the shape of the spine, that was firm yet breathable so it wouldn't heat the back and heat up the user. And here you actually get a glimpse of the small uh, uh, the small uh, uh, strap mechanical assist assembly where the spring-loaded mechanisms would help take off the loads, and I'll talk a little bit more of that. But in essence, any loads that would transfer from the back in terms of the weight would travel through the backpack and into these kind of shock absorbers assemblies behind the waist belt. And having those 2 points of contact there under the cushion, right at the waist, was ideal. Let's uh, let's look at that in a little more detail. So here we see that the shock absorbers um, were basically the critical component to mechanically assist the loads experienced by the user. And I thought to myself, well, if I can integrate this into the waist belt, then it becomes much more feasible for the waist to not only distribute the remaining loads, but we see that this was unobtrusive. It wasn't overly mechanical. The wonderful thing about these shock absorbers that are industrially available is that they're threaded on the top and the bottom, but there is also a level of adjustment that's also included. So the user can now tailor the amount of offset, load offset, that they would feel. And that in itself, I think, is a huge benefit to the users that may be carrying something heavy and would just like a bit more of that load to be offset. And so this idea, this approach was something I thought was going to be very fruitful, very helpful, considering that, again, there's sufficient space for this to be included, and it wasn't so cumbersome that the user wouldn't want to wear the backpack much more. Here, this figure 22 just simply shows how the waist, if you were to imagine it as a fixed plane, you see the load or the weight of the backpack pushing down on the user. We know that the waist would kind of be the place where these shock absorbers would then, being fixed, it would allow the shock absorbers to counter the load to a degree that the forces that one would actually experience at the end of this uh, process would be able to become less effective or become more effective and experience less of the discomfort and less of the load by the user. So proper fit was important. And as you could see from the side profiles, the cushion on the backpack was aimed to comfort and contour most curves of the spine, where the lower back is left empty for the purposes of ensuring that the waist belt uh, be flush up against that lower part, but also to ensure that there would never be a condition in which the backpack itself would move below the waist, where if in doing so, you want a user would experience a high level of pain and discomfort over time. So here I'm doing just a bit of a study in terms of, well, how big should the backpack be? I don't want to carry something the size of a table. And so I was just evaluating the proportions and sizes, and I wanted to ensure that I could fit a 15-inch laptop in this backpack. I realized that in the market, at my local store, 15 was typically the most common size, and there were other sizes much smaller. So I felt that accommodating a 15-inch laptop would probably be the extent to which I would probably want to go during this first iteration, and see just how well it fits and how the user would fit, as you could see in figure 24, just how they would work within that confined space. Um, it became apparent that yes, I kind of wish it would be bigger, but for a uncommon practice of working outside, for the occasional need to have to do something outside, perhaps for work or for study, I felt that this was sufficient. I felt that this was something that uh, was probably a good medium to move forward with in terms of space. Here we're looking at just how this backpack would fold and unfold. I imagine that the privacy panels would be held by simple straps that were elastic and that would mount to the lower portion of the backpack that would be folded down. Uh, the mirror would be hidden as the top lid would be folded out and covered. In terms of how to secure this, there were a lot of options in terms of how to strap, whether to include Velcro, whether to include any kind of tie-in straps of some kind or tie-ins. I felt that that was something I could deal with later, but wanted to ensure that the backpack in itself would be capable of folding within itself and folding to such a way where nothing would be obviously falling out, and where items would be securely held, and that aesthetically it would be pleasing enough to wear. So I had to now finally take a reflection, and look back and look at my objectives to see if I had come close. And per my analysis, I found that I did meet objective number one, to design a backpack that transforms its form factor to a mobile workspace that included some degree and some level of privacy. I also found that the mechanical assist system was capable, in design and in theory, to offset the loads that a user would likely experience when carrying a backpack. So offsetting those loads would certainly mean helping the user experience less discomfort and improving on the human factor of just wearing a backpack. Ergonomically, I'm sure it addressed some of the more some of the biggest concerns when wearing backpacks, especially if you're only wearing it with one strap, or you're just wearing it over your shoulder rather than using two, or not even using a waist belt. But I felt that this mechanical system embodied all three ideal situations: using both straps, using a waist belt, but also offsetting that load was key. And thirdly, um, I had the opportunity to actually improve form and fit of the backpack, including using the cushion that's in the back where there's contour, and felt very confident that I would be helping the user prevent any injury and prevent any level of misuse. So here we have a picture of just what a typical setting might look like in a public space where, you're sitting, having your coffee perhaps, and with the public around, you can certainly work within your private little mobile workspace and not be so concerned as onlookers looking at your screen or looking at what you're doing, but working in a multifunctional way with a backpack that's not sitting next to you doing nothing anymore, and being able to take your work anywhere. So I felt that this product idea just taught me a lot. I felt that it offered a lot of opportunity to consider some refinements. Of course, I've had a few more ideas to include as part of this product idea, but I felt that this was sufficient just for the time being as I explore other avenues and other opportunities to probably improve on this idea as a whole. Well, that's my project, and that's some of the lessons I've learned. I hope that you've gained something from the learning outcomes, and I'm happy to answer any questions should there be any.
Yes, thank you, Carlos. Thank you so much for your presentation. Amazing work. We will now open the session, as Carlos said, to some questions or comments. If anyone wants to participate, you can just use the raise hand tool or open your mics, or if you prefer, you can also type your questions in the chat. But in the meantime, while we wait, I want to thank you once again, Carlos, for accepting our invitation and for
Thank
being with us today. Have you thought about prototyping this idea? Has this been an
Yes, that's a
idea
very
of
good
yours?
question.
Yes.
Yes, I've actually been evaluating certain materials to possibly prototype this. As you know, most backpacks are fabric in nature in terms of just no rigidness. They simply are just flexible material. For the purpose of this backpack, I would need something stiffer and a bit more resilient because we certainly want to protect our items inside, but we certainly don't want to work on something that's flimsy at all. And so I've actually been interested in finding, I guess, the ideal material to possibly construct a prototype, and at the same time, um, see what concerns or what challenges may come from that material itself to make this actually a reality.
Yeah, I think Mafalda's raised their hands.
Yes.
Yes, I'm just trying to restart the video. I don't know if you can see me. Carlos, thank you so much for your presentation and your time. I know it's morning there where you are, while we are by the end of the day here almost. So this is not a question, it's more like a challenge. When you start thinking about prototyping and about the materials, my challenge is also think about sustainable materials.
Absolutely. I've actually considered a material called PET.
Mm-hmm,
PET is actually made from recycled plastics, primarily water bottles.
mm-hmm,
In some material, some PET materials, there's actually plant fibers also included. So it's a very sustainable material, and it comes in various thicknesses, up to a half inch. But there is a possibility that that might be an ideal material to prototype with, while also hoping to keep sustainability in mind. Certainly, that's an important aspect to consider when prototyping
yeah.
something of this nature. But no, your challenge is legitimate, and at the same time, just finding something that's rigid and comfortable to wear as a backpack is just something that I think is going to take a little time to discern exactly where the best fit is and how best to sustainably support it as well.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, I don't know if anyone wants to comment, Okay, Alan has raised his hand. You can go ahead.
Yeah, how you doing? Hey, that was a really great presentation, Carlos. I just had a question. Throughout the process, were there any steps along the way that you could see being changed to make the process more seamless or avoid, some of the hurdles you faced along the way? Or are there any like resources that you like looked at that, freed up a lot of those hurdles, or, gave you a path to get through the project?
So when I was actually researching shock absorbers, I found a lot of complicated ones. And to find one that was small enough to be inclusive of what I was trying to do was a bit of a challenge. But I do believe that it's possible to maybe focus on that area and develop the mechanism, the mechanical assist system, perhaps in other ways that don't necessarily include a shock absorber. Although I think this is a great way to start. But I think because this is mechanically assisted, I think I have sufficient real estate behind the waist to include perhaps just an innovative way of mechanically pushing that. Um, Other things that were a bit of a challenge that I thought were difficult to kind of settle on was, the body in itself, just there's just no standard shape. We're all a little different. We may be a little wider across the shoulders. We may be a little fuller around the waist. Regardless, it's trying to accommodate as many people as possible. And that's a challenge. And because, everyone's a little different. And so, to define, I guess, a set of objectives that would hopefully improve a user's experience was a bit of a challenge because there's just no way of addressing and helping everybody. So you kind of have to design in such a way where you're not going to hit everything you want, but you're going to have to basically accommodate as best as you can, as much as you can.
Awesome. Thank you for the answer.
Good question.
Thank you, Alan, for your question. Does anyone else want to participate? I don't think so. So I think we can end the masterclass here. Once again, Carlos, thank you so much for accepting our invitation. It has been truly an insightful time and an interesting time. And I want to thank all of you for being here with us today. And hopefully we'll see you again in another masterclass, maybe. Hope you have a wonderful day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.